everyone, it's Misty, and this week I have a super simple project that's all about letting your quilting shine. Okay, so I wanted to make a really simple table runner because we have this great variegated thread in our machine quilting department, and I really wanted that to be the star. So I'm calling this the squared away table runner. You're going to want to pick up one pack of your favorite 5-inch squares. I am using Bloomsville by Tilda. It's just these gorgeous florals. If you're a Tilda fan, you know it's just beautiful. You'll need 3/4 of a yard of your background. I use this great navy. And then for the backing, you're going to need 1.5 yards and also a little bit for your binding. So let's go ahead and set this aside and I'll walk you through how to make it. So like I said, I wanted something super simple. So I just have 6 5-inch squares going top and bottom, and I chose kind of a gradient layout for this, so you can see it goes yellow to red through the colors that are in this charm pack, and I alternated that on the opposite side. So this one goes yellow to red, and up on the top it goes red to yellow. And so we're just going to pick 6. If you have matching, great. If you don't, this is still going to look great even if it's 6 different scrappy 5-inch squares. So don't fuss too much about it. And the beautiful thing about this is you could add more squares if you wanted. You could add less if you need a shorter runner. It's just really versatile for you to customize for whatever you're looking for, and it's super quick to put together for gifts. So I'm just going to follow this same pattern that I have, but when you're making yours, be sure to just play with it and have fun. There's no right or wrong way. So we have these ready to go. And so I am going to just start sewing one after the other. Now in this particular collection, there are a few prints that are directional. And so if you have one of those, you might just want to decide which way of your runner is up, or maybe you don't care at all and they can go every which way, but just keep that in mind if you have a directional print. So we're just going to start sewing these together with our 1/4 inch seam, one after the other, until for my version we get 6 in a row. So I'm just going to pick up one after the other and add them. So here's one of those prints that's a little bit directional. You can see the birds all go up one way, and we have these little houses that need to go facing upright. And these little trees kind of want to go upright as well, so just something you want to keep in mind. And one more print here to add to the end, and then we have our 6 together. Right, so now I've sewn all 6 of these end to end, and let's go ahead and give these a press. We just want it to lay flat. There's nothing we have to worry about matching up or anything like that. So we'll just roll those seams back and make sure it lays nice and flat from the top. And so you'll see here's this one, and I have the other one done, and they're just opposites. And so that's what you're looking for, or that's what I chose to do on this particular one. And so now, from your background, you're going to want to cut 2 5-inch strips and 2 8-inch strips. And that's what you're going to need for one runner. And so to start with, I just took my 5-inch strips, and I'm going to go ahead and stack these up and cut the selvage off. So let's just line these up here. Make sure they're straight on my mat. And then we'll get rid of this selvage so that that doesn't get caught in our final project. There we go. And now I'm just going to sew one of these to each of my pieces. So this one I'm going to sew onto the yellow side, which means I'll want to do the same with the other one because we want them to be on opposites. Does that make sense? All right. There's that one. And then from our other piece, we'll add that to the yellow again. There we go. And so let's go ahead and press both of these. Again, just making sure everything is laying flat. I do like to roll this seam to the dark side since I'm using a darker fabric. And this is just a little bit wrinkly, so I'm going to go ahead and press this whole thing just so I don't have to fight with it later. So there's that first one, and we can just set this aside for a minute and go ahead and press the other one. There we go. So one thing I want to point out is this is a lot longer than the finished runner that I chose to make. And so this is step one of you being able to decide how long or how short you want this to be. The finished one I made, I measured to 60 inches. And so I did that by simply laying it on my mat and knowing that this needs to come over to 30 inches. So I just lined this up and then slid my print down until I got to where I needed to be. So it took a little bit of figuring, but I knew I didn't want to actually cut off any of those 5-inch squares. And so I just adjusted it slightly, just like you're seeing me do here. And then I make sure that it's lined up at the 0. And then I can come back and this lines up exactly with the 30. And so we'll just lay our ruler here and grab my rotary cutter. And then we can just trim that off. And so now I know that this strip measures 60 inches and I just cut a little bit off. So if you didn't want to trim this, you could leave it this full length. And then when we add our middle strip, you'll just make it match. So really totally up to you. You could make this shorter if you wanted. There's no right or wrong way. And so let's go ahead and do that same thing to the other side. We've got this folded, looking for that 30-inch measurement. Just need to slide that down. Oop, too far. You can see it just takes a little bit of figuring. If you have a smaller mat, you can just use your ruler to measure, or just, measure a little bit at a time so that you make sure you have that all lined up in the end. But for me, I just laid it across this way. So there we go. There's my 30-inch mark again, ready to go. Just make sure everything is nice and straight. And then we'll trim this off. All right. And there's our little bit of waste. Okay, so now let's get the center section ready to go. And so for just following along with the pattern, it's going to just have you sew your 2 strips together, which I've gone ahead and sewn these here. But what I did, because I knew I wanted to make more than one and have these for gifts, I went ahead and cut 3 of these center strips, and then I just cut it in half, and then I would have enough to do 2 of the middle sections. Does that make sense? So really quick and easy to make for gifts. And so I have this long strip ready to go, and now we're just going to add, let me move this one out of the way so you guys can see here. We're going to add one of our strips to the top and one to the bottom, and I'm not going to trim this one up yet because I want to be able to square my runner up at the end. And so you can see here how this is just going to line up, and we're going to sew this down, and then I'll come back and I'll add the other strip so it goes this way. And so let's go ahead and sew these nice big long strips on here. Take this to the machine, and you can see how quickly this is going to come together. It'd be a really fun project to practice your own free motion quilting on. Do some fun patterns in between. Let's just go ahead and zoom down this side. Just take your time in between and make sure everything's staying lined up. Right, so we have that all done, and you can see that this is uneven on this end here. I'm not worried about that at all at this point. And so now I'm just going to go back, and I want this one to be opposite, and so I'm going to start with the background side of my strip. That's why we went ahead and cut these even at the beginning, and so now we can take this to the machine and run down this long side. So we'll just line this up. And sail down the side. Now I'm using white thread so you guys can see here, but I would not do that normally. I would change this to a dark thread. So just keep that in mind. Right. When you're sewing big long strips like this, you want to be careful not to tug. You're just letting the machine do the work. The only thing I'm doing is making sure everything stays lined up. But you'll get some puckering and pulling if you're tugging too hard on the fabric. All right. Almost there. All right, we did it. And so now let's give this a really good press. I'm going to take some time over here at the iron to make sure everything is laying smoothly. And so let's just roll this back all the way down the length of the runner. Can you believe how quick this comes together? Can see why it'd be great for gifts. Okay, and then come back and press the opposite side as well, just so this lays really smooth and we don't have any errors when we go to trim off the other end. There we go, it's all pressed. And so now let's lay this on the mat here. And because we lined everything up on the opposite side, this is the only end that we need to trim up. And so I'm just going to make sure this is nice and straight on my mat. And you'll notice these are a little bit off, even though I trimmed them to the same size early on. But none of that matters because we can just line this up and trim it off because this is our background. Because they're going opposite directions, everything's going to be square in the end. Let me actually swap this out for a longer ruler. so we can cut this in one long cut. But you see what I mean? Like we have our 5-inch square here. I just make sure everything's lined up with that. I'm actually going to slide this over so it's right on that number. And then we just have this straight cut all the way through, just like so. There's our waist. And now our runner is ready for quilting. Isn't that so quick and easy? And the other thing I want you to keep in mind is you could do a few small blocks in this same concept if you don't want to just have these simple squares. And instead of doing a bunch of work for the whole runner, you can have a little bit of pop just on either end. And so let's talk a little bit about the quilting. Let me move this out of the way. And we'll pull back our finished runner here. And so you can see how great this turns out. I used the time warp pattern, which is one of my favorites. It's just a really kind of modern and simple pattern that still provides a lot of movement, which I love in my quilting. And we use this great rainbow variegated thread, which ties in with the kind of ombre rainbow layout we did of those 5-inch squares. And so I just love it. I love it with this navy background. You can see both sides. It looks beautiful. There's our backing. I know some people have a hard time with dark backgrounds, so I went ahead and made it with white so you could see that as well. And it still looks beautiful with that variegated thread. So just play with it. Maybe try out your own free motion quilting or straight line quilting. This is a great project to let that quilting really shine. So I hope you enjoyed this squared away table runner, and I'll see you next time on At Home.
Hey everyone, it's Misty. Thanks for watching At Home. If you aren't already a part of our Missouri Star family, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you want a notification every time we release a new video. I'll see you next Monday on the newest episode of At Home.